Welcome to the Chronicles of Cigarnia, where we pair books and cigars. And it really doesn't get much better than that, does it? Today we are looking at two pandemic releases having to do with the famous British Prime Minister and even more famous cigar smoker, Winston Churchill. For the book, we have Erik Larson's The Splendid and the Vile, and for the cigar, we have Davidoff's Winston Churchill Limited Edition 2021 Toro. They're not interested in brevity as far as names. Turns out they're not really interested in brevity of size either, because this is quite the cigar. It is a beautiful light brown color that I would say is kind of reminiscent of a mocha you would get at a nice coffee shop. It is only slightly veiny, like you could see here. Veiny in a way where you can follow the leaf around actually and admire the construction on this little beauty. It's quite pretty. And this band is true to the Davidoff style. There is the man himself there with that Davidoff gold and white. Very classy, very pared down. Reminds me of those ladies who we think of as fashion icons who don't have to be all fancy and blingy. I'm thinking like Jackie O or Audrey Hepburn, because they themselves are the bling and the fanciness. Yeah, Davidoff. I really appreciate the sage green that they used for this limited edition. It really complements the brown color of the wrapper. It's quite nice. This is slightly sweet. A little intense, a little earthy, barnyardy. We'll see. All right, let's cut this. Super green and grassy. Just a touch of resistance, which I happen to like. Unexpectedly light after the smell coming off of the bottom of the cigar. Does anyone get anxious about smoking their really nice cigars, or is it just me? I feel like when I pull one out of my humidor, there's a hole there and I feel it right here and I just like, I don't want to do it. Or I feel like if I light it, I might get like about here and get struck by lightning. I don't know, and then I'm not doing it justice or something. Here it goes. Ah! And somehow now that I'm lighting it, everything feels a little bit better. Amazing how that works, right? So if you know anything about the cigar world, you know that Davidoff is the Rolls Royce of cigars. Ooh, there's a nice fragrance coming off of this already. And it's true, they make some of the most divine products. It's amazing these things can do. Yeah, first puffs, just smoothness. Yeah, and there's that famous Davidoff creaminess. So just so we're thorough about this, the tobacco is Nicaraguan and Dominican, and the wrapper is from Ecuador. So, okay. I think it's time to start talking about this book. Here is The Splendid and the Vile by Erik Larson. Kind of big book, big cigar, small hands. Here he is. And if you are at all interested in nonfiction, you have probably heard of this gentleman. He has quite a few bestsellers on his list already. One that I am familiar with is called The Devil in the White City, about a serial killer stalking the Chicago World Fair in the 1800s. He picks really interesting subjects, and this one is no exception. So this book focuses on a relatively small portion of time in the enormity that is World War II. It's just the first year that Churchill is in office as Prime Minister, which coincides more or less with the Blitz, where Germany is bombing England. Now, Erik Larson's style is that he will novelize this, and so it reads very much like a work of fiction. But he is very specific at the beginning that any thought, quote, or action that he features in this comes from a record of some sort, like someone's diary or someone's journal. I can't imagine the level of research that goes into something like this. And actually, about this much of the book is actually his research notes. So Churchill was a great writer himself, and he has already written very thorough memoirs of this time. So the best possible person has told his point of view of the story. What Erik Larson does is he takes the point of view from people who are closest to him and around him at this time. And so you get the perspective of people like his private guard, his private doctor, his teenage daughter, his wife, his secretaries and his aides, and a few of the cabinet members who he has appointed to help him during this time. What emerges is a very interesting portrait of a man during a very intense time of his life. Winston Churchill emerges as this incredibly overwhelming, energetic, sometimes monstrous, sometimes angelic, but always, always compassionate, crazy, wacky paragon of a human being. I will give you some anecdotes a little bit later, but oh my goodness, I had no idea what an eccentric he was. This guy was a wackadoo in a totally good, gonna save England type of way. So let's start talking about this cigar. So if the Winston Churchill limited edition 2021 Toro isn't long enough for you as far as a name, there's also a sub-name to this lovely cigar, and it is the Commander. It is supposed to embody some of the qualities of Winston Churchill as the commander who led the country through World War II, and I think it is an even better fit for our book because of that. So I can't tell you if the flavor profile of this is commander-esque, but what I can tell you is that in the first third, oh my heavens, it is so smooth. It's maybe a bit of leather, and just with a hint of a floral element to it. Kind of like when you're walking by some blooming flowers and you catch that little bit of a whiff. Imagine that happening on your palate, if that makes any sense. That's what's happening in the first third here. Yeah, and there's a bit of vanilla seeping into this too. Did I say it's good? It's pretty good. Yeah, that draw is open and easy. It's burning nice and consistently. We've got a beautiful gray ash going here, staying together despite my gesturing. It's very good. Did I mention I like it? Okay, so let's get back to the book. So the cast of characters that Erik Larson chooses is wonderful. And one of the things that I really appreciated is that it reminds you that humans are humans no matter what kind of craziness is going on. And a great example of this is Mary Churchill, who is Churchill's teenage daughter, as I mentioned. She is just turning 18 during this year. She later goes on to be an air defense gunner, which is totally badass. But at this time, she is just figuring out who she is, and she's watching her father with a mixture of incredible pride and admiration, but also worry, but complete faith that he's got it handled. And she is a teenager. This girl would go out dancing all night long with her friends or soldiers while there are bombs destroying the buildings to the left and the right of their club. So it's interesting to see, no matter what is happening, an 18-year-old is going to do what an 18-year-old is going to do. So I am not one of these people who likes to keep the ash on as long as possible, but I wanted to show you this before I knocked it off because it is looking a little bit hazardous here. You see how much I gesture, right? This is really staying together. Let's see if it wants to. It really doesn't want to come off, but I think we better, oh yeah, I think. That nice Ligero in there. People. So for the second third, it's just increasing in creaminess. It is maintaining a bit of that leather flavor. If you've smoked Davidoffs, you know what I'm talking about when I say the Davidoff creaminess. It is a thing throughout all of their cigars. Where some cigars will give you a hint of creaminess or a flavor of creaminess, Davidoff uses creaminess as the delivery system for every other flavor, which is one thing I really enjoy about all of their cigars. And this one is no exception. Excuse me really quickly to just enjoy this. Ooh. Life is good. As far as creaminess goes, this one is a little less sweet than some creaminess I've had in other Davidoff cigars. It's kind of like a less sweet creme brulee. Yeah, and a bit of oak maybe, but definitely that leather and cream. People. Burn has been pretty consistent, I'd say. Draw is lovely still. I have not had to relight it. Jeez, Davidoff, man. Okay, so just a few anecdotes for you from this book as teasers. We will occasionally get the point of view of a German officer or a German fighter pilot because this is the time of the Blitz. One of Germany's top flying aces, as they called it, was a man named Galland, which I think I'm saying his name right. Galland was already famous as a fighter pilot when the war starts, and he was so good at what he did that he was the only one allowed to smoke his cigar while flying. Hitler did not approve of tobacco. Well, evidently he smoked like a chimney when he was young, but when he got older and he was in charge, he decided that it was a waste of money and decadent. And if Hitler being against cigar smoking isn't a good excuse to smoke cigars, I don't know what is. You can tell your friends and family that you are lighting up a cigar in solidarity against Nazism. I don't know. Down with the Nazis. Smoke cigars. Anyway, Galland became very recognizable. The fighter pilots from Britain would recognize him because here would come this German fighter pilot and they would see him with the cigar sticking out of his mouth as he shot down their planes. When Galland was finally shot down over England, he was so respected by his fellow pilots that the English fighter pilots brought him cigars where he was being kept. Okay, and here is some for you about Churchill, the man himself. You might know that he lived and worked in the same building, 10 Downing Street. Evidently, he would come down to work in these crazy fancy robes, like blingy gold and crazy silky red with like ridiculously fluffy slippers. If he was wearing much of anything at all. It's pretty well known that he would give dictation from the bathtub and from his bed, always starting a cigar directly after breakfast. When he was visiting the White House, Roosevelt went to go have a meeting with him in Churchill's rooms, and when he showed up, Churchill was naked with just his cigar, was just basically walking around clothed in smoke only, and didn't bother to put on even a robe the entire time. And that's how politics are done, people. So, to sum up this book a little bit, I appreciate a fast read. This was not a fast read, but it was totally okay. It was kind of like having the most delicious, succulent steak dinner, or maybe a huge, glorious ice cream sundae, where you just want to savor each bite for as long as you possibly can. Every detail in this book was like that. I wanted to linger over it and fully absorb it. It was truly a pleasure from beginning to end. It was fascinating. It was inspiring. The man was hugely flawed and yet enormously good. And he was in the right place at the right time. He seemed to be the leader that people needed. Yeah, this book gives you a bit of a boost about humanity. And it's just crazy interesting. So, through the magic of editing, we have moved to the third. If I did this in real time, we would be here for hours. There is some cacao sneaking into this. Nice, but still so creamy. Yeah, that leather is morphing into the cacao the farther we get along into the cigar. It's staying delicious, and it's still smoking like a dream. I don't want it to end. So regarding the fourth third, or the after effects of the cigar, as far as fragrance, it doesn't really stay. Though when I was doing the initial test with the tasting panel, there was some fragrance which frankly I wanted to stay around because it was so delicious and it reminded me of how yummy this cigar is. And the room notes, as we call them in my household, the smell of the smoke is so sweet. This is the creme brulee smell, like when you're toasting that sugar on top of the creme brulee. Sugary sweetness. Very nice. For how mild it is flavor-wise, it is moderately strong. Not terribly so, especially considering how long I've been smoking this. But I would say it's a good medium as far as strength goes. So if you are inclined to have a beverage with your cigar, as I know many of you are, the tasting panel tried it originally with some rum, and that turned out not to complement the cigar so much. But when we switched to a rye, it was like a vanilla explosion, and it brought the sweetness and the vanilla out in both the cigar and the rye. So if you have some good rye hanging around your house, it might be a good pairing with this. As far as price goes, looking around, this seems to be anywhere from $32 to $35. It is not cheap, but it is a limited edition. They only made about 11,000 boxes total. And I have to say that if I were able, I might buy all 11,000 boxes because, frankly, it's delicious. Also, keep in mind that this is about a 2-hour cigar, I would say. Davidoff claims that it is a 60-minute cigar. So, to sum up, this was lovely. If you see one and you are able, I say definitely grab it. It would make a wonderful gift for somebody or a wonderful treat for yourself. You got 2 hours of just bliss with this. So before we get into what's going on next time, I just want to say thank you to my tasting panel again. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to the people who have subscribed. It blows my mind that you are so generous with your time as to want to see these. So thank you very much. Please hit like, please do subscribe if you haven't and you're so inclined. I want to give a shout out this time to my parents, who have not only discovered that their daughter smokes cigars, but also that she is reviewing them on YouTube for everybody to see. So, hi Mom, hi Dad. So next time we are going to be reading a book about a fictional rock band from the 1970s. And it's in the style of a rockumentary, or I think VH1 did a series called Behind the Music. So if you like rock and roll from the 70s, this might be the episode for you. Their hit album was called Aurora. So if you know the cigar world, I bet you can guess what cigar brand we're gonna be smoking. So until then, I hope you're smoking some great cigars, and this was so darn good. Oh my goodness, I don't want it to stop. I hope you're reading some good books, and ideally, I hope you're doing them both at the same time. Thank you again. See you next time. My neighbor is building a deck. He's a good neighbor.